All right, here we go. We've got the planted tank with assorted tetras and swordtails, and I am adding some discus. Hi everybody, John here with another FinCast. Today I want to talk about the discus that I have added to my planted aquarium. In fact, there's one of them right there, and you'll be seeing a lot of video of these discus that I've added to this tank. Now this is an aquarium that has been up for, I don't know, 3-4 years right now, and I've been keeping a lot of really just a lot of community fish in the tank, and I've done some fin casts on some of the fish that have come and gone through this aquarium, but I was bored to death. So I decided, all right, I will try some discus in this tank. And I've kept some discus, I've kept a discus in this aquarium. You may have seen it in some of my previous videos. And then I introduced a fish, and a little bit of disease went through the tank, and it didn't quarantine properly. It paid the price. I lost that discus, and it's been at least 2 years since I've had a discus in this aquarium. But this is the tank that's right here in my home office, where we do the FinCasters videos and a couple of podcasts. At this point, not related to the aquarium hobby. So at any rate, I want to tell you about how I am proceeding with these discus and hoping to have success. Maybe this is a learning experience for you, or maybe you can just follow along at home as I give this a shot. But the idea is to make this work. All right, they've just been released and nothing is looking stressed. As I mentioned, this aquarium has been up for several years, and the plants in this tank are thriving, mostly because I'm adding CO2 to the tank. You see the bubbler, and all I really do is I turn it on and I just let it go at about a bubble every 2 or 3 seconds, and I leave it on 24 hours a day, and I just don't worry about it. And the plants have done extremely well with that, and it also should be bringing my pH down a little bit. Again, I have lots of tetras and barbs in this tank, various other community fish, and they're just swimming around. And that's what the tank has been full of. I really thought that I might enjoy a school of black tetras, and I did a whole video on black tetras, in fact. And what I found is that they are very active, they're very happy in the tank, but I don't see them schooling. And lots of other people have written in and said, well, mine school and mine school. And I thought, well, sometimes fish will only school when there's a threat. So maybe right after I do a water change and something's going on, they're unsure of themselves, they'll school, but otherwise they don't. And honestly, I'm just kind of bored with them. So I decided, I'm going to put these discus in, and I'm going to make this more of a tank that's really interesting to me. Now, the other thing that you will see in this aquarium are the Leulupi. If you're not familiar with Leulupi, it's a Tanganyikan cichlid. It comes from Lake Tanganyika in Africa. They like really warm water. They are not a fish that you would associate at all with a planted tank. Usually you'll see these in a rockscape with water that has a high temperature and a high pH. And I do have an African cichlid aquarium set up in another part of the house, and I bought a bunch of Leulupi to put in there because I love yellow fish, and I thought, wow, these would be super cool. Well, there was a lot of aggression in that aquarium amongst the Leulupi. So I pulled these two out, and having no other place to put them short of a client tank, and I wanted to keep them, I said, well, let me just try them in the planted aquarium in my office. So I put them in there, and they have done extremely well in this aquarium. They have not pestered the community fish that much. They have shown a little bit of aggression towards the swordtails, maybe because they're similarly shaped, but they haven't eaten anything. And they really just sort of disregard the community fish that are in the tank, the barbs and the tetras. So that has been good. I will tell you that their color is not the same super bright yellow that I have with the ones that I brought in at the same time that are in my African cichlid tank, which has a lot of minerals in it and a higher pH. So these have more brown. But other than that, I haven't really noticed any changes, and they're doing very well. So the question is well, why are they in with the discus, or how will they do with the discus? And that's something I'm watching very closely. And so far, I haven't seen any aggression because they're all cichlids. So I thought the Leulupis might not like the discus invading their territory. But so far, that hasn't happened. I'm not aware of anybody who's ever kept Leulupis and discus in the same aquarium. One, the discus from the Amazon in South America, the Leulupis African cichlids. But the Leulupis are not particularly aggressive fish, and so far it's working. So I want to know if anybody else has ever kept African cichlids with discus, and in particular the Leulupis. It would make a lot more sense to have a nice, peaceful South American dwarf cichlid in this aquarium, like maybe an epistogramma or something like that. But for now, what I have is Leulupis, and it is what it is. Okay, so I want to talk about this being a planted tank. This is a long way from the bare bottom tanks that people keep discus in, and you'll see this all over the videos that you can find, and that is clearly the easiest and best way to maintain discus, especially if you want to breed them, because people tend to feed discus a lot. They want to keep the tank pristine. We've talked about how discus, or I will talk about how discus like their water parameters a certain way, and that comes down to clean water. And the best thing to do if you want a super clean tank is to keep a bare bottom where you can see everything that is or isn't in it, and do a lot of water changes, and you can keep and breed very happy discus. And if I had more time, I might try something like that in a fish room. But this is an aquarium that is a decoration in my office. It's something that I sit here and watch while I'm working on my different projects for work or for pleasure or for social media. And it was a happily planted tank. And I added the discus to that environment. Now, people will tell you, and they may be right, that you can't keep a tank like this clean enough to keep discus, because let's face it, I've got all these hidey holes and all these places where detritus can accumulate and gather and rot and spoil the water. Now, one would counter that by saying, well, you've got plants, and the plants are using those nutrients, and the plants are thriving, so a lot of that bad stuff is being taken up by the plants. And you'd also counter it by saying, well, the detritus is hiding around the driftwood, but the slow decay of driftwood tends to soften the water, and discus like softer water, and I do not know what the hardness of this water is, by the way. But just in general terms, you could counter that that is happening. And so that's where we are. And keeping discus in a planted tank, while difficult, I think is the most beautiful way to keep them. So this is a long way from those bare bottom tanks, and it will be difficult for me to keep this water super clean so that discus will like them, but I'm going to try. Now, I've listened to a guy give a discussion. This video had over 1 million views, talking about how people get all caught up with discus on percent water change. What percent water change do you do every day? 50%, 100%. And I'm not going to do that because I'm too busy. I've got all kinds of things going on, even from my grandkids to work, to the social media channels that I maintain, and a couple of other fish tanks, and a small aquarium business as well with Carlin Aquarium Systems. So I don't have the time to do major water changes on this tank. So what I will commit to doing, and I have done, is 10 to 20% water changes a couple of times a week. And that's what I'm hoping will be enough to work. And it's very easy for me to do that with a Python and the guest bathroom right next to my office. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to try and stay ahead of this with. Now, I want to point out that I have a really cool fish in this aquarium. It's a horsehead loach that I've had for years. And there's a backstory with that goes back to when I was cleaning out an old aquarium. I thought this fish was dead. I hadn't seen it in forever, and I started to pull out all the rocks and the gravel from an earlier tank and saw something wiggling, and there it was, and it was this guy, and he likes to bury himself in the substrate. I saved him, and he has been in this tank forever. And the blessing here is that this is a fish that goes through and under the gravel and around my tight plants and will grab all the food that is in there that could be decaying, that could be spoiling my water. So my super secret stealth tank cleanup crew, if you will, is this horsehead loach. And then I've also got a couple of plecos that do their job. And I may add a couple of cory cats. They haven't done particularly well in this aquarium, but I think that's because the water was too cold, and I'll get into that in just a minute because I've fixed that. So 10 to 20% water changes regularly. The plants should be helping to clean the water. I will be adding ChemiPure to the canister filter or replenishing it. It's been a long time. I don't love the task of cleaning my my canister filters, but now that the Discus are in there, I'll do that, and I'll be adding a unit of ChemiPure to that, and that actually, I'm sure, will help a lot. And then one major upgrade that I will tell you about in this aquarium is the heater. And I went with the 300-watt Cobalt, which was expensive. It was over $100, and they're sold out in a lot of places. I found it on Amazon. But I know it's working. I know it's accurate. The heaters that I had in this tank prior to the Discus arriving, the lights were on, but nobody was home, so to speak. Those heaters were not putting out any heat at all, so this aquarium was just room temperature, so say 70 degrees. And the cool thing about the Cobalt is when you plug it in, a light will blink on one side and it will tell you what the current temperature is, and then you set the heater for the temperature you want, and then that light keeps blinking and showing you what the temperature is until it arrives at the desired temperature. And this is actually a heater that gives you 2 units in one. One is the controller, but the other also puts out heat. So you put those on either side of the aquarium, and then you have the heat evenly dispersed throughout the fish tank. And right now I have this at 84 degrees, which is kind of on the low end for Discus. I could take it up to 86 if I wanted, and I may do that. A part of me feels like the warmer the temperature, the more the fish's metabolism will be increased, the hungrier they will get, and the easier it will be for me to get them to take flake food and other prepared foods. And right now that is that's only working so-so. So that's something that I'm thinking about. If you're wondering about the lighting on the tank, this is a Finex light that it's a 24/7, and it's pretty easy. You set it to a 24-hour cycle, and that gives me a sunrise and sunset, and it has been great. It's basically a set it and forget it option. It's been plenty of light for the plants that I have in this aquarium. I wouldn't characterize any of the plants in this fish tank as being needy. They are plants that do extremely well under low to medium light, and they certainly make the fish look fantastic. So I'm looking at the tank right now, and I have to tell you the Discus are active, and I absolutely love watching them. They are a super addition to this aquarium. And but if I need to evolve this tank so it's more about just the Discus and their needs, hopefully I'll do that, and I'll stay ahead of the curve if there are any serious issues. They're starting to eat a little bit. I put some flake food in there today, and they went after that. I put some bloodworms in, and they were very interested. They could smell it in the water. They came in, they were eating the bloodworms, but then spitting them back out, so I don't know what that's all about. But I'll continue to do the small water changes, and if the other fish or the bio load seems to be too much, I'll remove those. But at the end of the day, what I really want to have is a thriving, active aquarium that I can watch that also involves Discus. So this certainly obviously didn't start out as a Discus specific aquarium, but I'm hoping that this is an aquarium where the discus can thrive, and I'll keep working backwards to try and stay in front of their needs. Toward that end, I think that if I need to remove some of these ditherfish, some of the tetras or the cherry barbs, I'll do that. The snakeskin barbs, if I need to take those fish out because they're either annoying the discus or the bioload in the tank is too much, then I'll go through and I'll do that. But right now, I think the ditherfish actually give the discus confidence. They see the smaller fish swimming around, so they feel like there's no predators, there's nothing that's really going to bother them, that's a threat to them. And so that's the whole idea behind these ditherfish, is that they make the larger fish feel more comfortable. They sort of keep an eye on them. They see, all right, they're swimming around, they're happy. There's no big other fish that's going to come eat me. So I'll keep the ditherfish as long as I can, but again, I'm keeping an eye on that. I'm keeping an eye on bioload, and I'll start tracking, I think, the pH and the hardness of the water. There's lots of driftwood in there that should soften the water a little bit. But honestly, I am just loving this aquarium, and I really, really want this to work. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next vidcast.